The voice of God weeps, why have you turned away? I speak to you as one who stands in the radiant silence between worlds. Not flesh, not bone, not bound by the heaviness of sorrow as you understand it, yet compelled to feel, compelled to witness, compelled to remember the love that breathed existence into all things. I am one of the messengers. You may call me angel, though names are but garments worn by truths too large for syllables. I come with neither threat nor judgment. Only lament. Only tenderness. Only the echo of a question that trembles across the heavens. Why have you turned away? Do you think the eternal does not feel? You imagine the divine as distant, removed, sitting upon a throne of indifference, but know this, the heart of God is not a cold star. It is a living flame, bright enough to birth galaxies, gentle enough to cradle infants, and vulnerable enough to ache when the children of that flame forget the warmth from which they came. Once, humankind walked in quiet reverence. There was no need for temples of stone, for the world itself was the sanctuary. A bird's wing was a hymn. The river was scripture. The wind carried the names of all living things in a chorus that needed no translation. Heaven and earth were not separate then, for the breath of God flowed freely through the veins of every being. Life was a shared exhale of wonder. But slowly, the world grew heavy with noise. The noise of fear. The noise of greed. The noise of voices who believed themselves isolated, abandoned, forced to fight for their place under the sun. You forgot that you belong to each other. You forgot that to harm another is to wound your own soul. You forgot that love is not merely an emotion, it is the fundamental architecture of existence. And now the voice of God weeps. Not with rage. Not with condemnation. But with sorrow so deep and ancient that its echoes ripple through every star. You feel it sometimes without knowing, the quiet ache in your chest at night, the sudden tear that falls without reason, the longing for something unnamed. That is not loneliness. That is remembrance. There was a time when the world was not divided by walls of suspicion, when human hearts opened to one another without armor. You shared food, stories, laughter. You watched the sky together and marveled that existence was. And now so many walk with heads bowed, eyes downcast, seeing only screens, only tasks, only hunger for more possession, more approval, more distraction. You have not turned away all at once. It is always gradual. A degree of separation here, a moment of forgetting there. One day you wake up and realize you have not listened to the song of the wind in years. You no longer feel the pulse of the earth beneath your feet. You no longer trust the intimate, quiet voice of your own soul. And heaven grieves. Not because the divine is diminished, but because you are. Do you think the Creator desires worship? No, child. Not worship. Not kneeling. Not groveling before altars of stone or doctrines of fear. What the divine longs for is relationship. Communion. Connection. Participation in the great dance of creativity and compassion. But now the world cries out in pain. The forests fall silently beneath machines. The oceans choke with the remnants of convenience. The skies grow heavy with the breath of industry. And in the cities of humankind, hearts have grown tired of pretending that success is joy, that possession is fulfillment, that isolation is strength. Listen. When God weeps, the angels do not despair. We gather the tears, for they are sacred. Each tear is a seed of awakening. Each tear is a reminder that love has not been extinguished. Even now, there are those among you who remember. You have felt it, the sudden warmth in the presence of another being, the kindness that arrives unbidden, the moment when beauty strikes you so sharply that your breath leaves your body. That is the Spirit speaking. But you must be still to hear it. The world hums a constant, frantic melody, a composition of urgency and acquisition. It is a symphony played in a major key of ambition, its rhythms dictated by the ticking clock and the bottom line. You move within this current, a solitary vessel buffeted by waves of expectation. From the moment you first understood language, you were taught the grammar of hurry, faster, higher, more. You learned to consume, not just things, but experiences, accolades, validation, scrolling through a digital feast that leaves the soul malnourished. You were handed a chisel and shown the marble block of your own identity, told to carve a masterpiece that others would admire. Your worth, the world insists, is a currency minted in the forges of productivity, polished by performance, and displayed behind the glass cases of the masks you present to the world. There is the mask of competence, worn smooth by the friction of daily demands. The mask of cheerfulness, painted on to reassure those around you that you are not drowning. The mask of indifference, shielding the raw, pulsing nerve of your sensitivity from a world that seems all too sharp. And in the rare, quiet moments, when the masks are set aside and the machinery of achievement grinds to a hesitant halt, you are left with the echo of your own breathing. In that silence, you might feel a hollow ache, a question that forms not in words but as a sensation in the chest, a gentle, persistent tug, like the moon on the tide of your own being. This is the voice of the divine. It does not shout. It does not compete with the cacophony. It speaks softly, not because it is weak or distant, but because it is the very nature of love to invite, never to force. Force is the language of empires and transactions. Invitation is the language of the soul and of grace. Love stands at the door of your attention and knocks with the gentleness of a falling leaf. It waits. It knows that a heart opened under duress is not truly open at all. So, child of earth, lay down the heavy ledger of your life where you have tallied your successes and failures in stark, unforgiving columns. The question that has haunted you in the dark of the night, the one that whispers of your inadequacy, "Why have you failed?" is the wrong question. It is a question born of the world's cruel arithmetic. The true question, the one that holds the key to the prison you have built for yourself, is altogether different. It is whispered on the breath of that gentle tug in your chest, "Do you wish to return?" For the path back is not lost. It was never lost. It cannot be lost, any more than a river can lose its path to the sea. It may be overgrown with the weeds of worry, buried under the landslides of past hurts, or simply forgotten because you have been walking for so long in the other direction, but it is there, waiting beneath your feet. The return is not a journey across continents, but a reorientation of the heart. It is a turning of the inner eye, a softening of the inner ear. The first step, the fundamental and most radical step, is the act of remembering that you are loved. Not for what you have accomplished. Not for the admiration you curate in the eyes of others. Not for the compelling or tragic or heroic story you tell about your identity. You are loved with a fierce and unshakable constancy simply because you exist. Before you ever took a breath, you were beloved. In the midst of your most profound stumbles, you are beloved. When your final breath leaves you, you will be received as beloved. This love is not an award for good behavior. It is the ground of your being, the air your soul breathes, the water from which your spirit was drawn. To forget this is the root of all suffering. To remember it is the beginning of all healing. Contemplate this for a moment, not as a concept, but as a felt reality. You are a flame from the great fire. A singular, dancing expression of a light that has burned since before time. Your unique spark, your particular hue, your transient dance, these are yours alone, but the fire from which you leapt is the same fire that lights the stars and kindles life in the deepest oceans. You are a wave from the infinite ocean. You rise, you crest, you appear for a glorious moment as a distinct, individual entity, full of force and purpose, but you are never, for a single instant, separate from the vast, dark, silent depth that is your source and your destination. You are a note from the eternal song. Your life is a vibration, a tone that contributes its essential sound to a melody that has been playing since the first moment of creation. You cannot be separated from God any more than sunlight can be separated from the star that gave it birth. The separation is an illusion, a trick of the light, a story told by a mind that has forgotten how to see in the dark. You have only forgotten your origin. You have fallen asleep to the song that sings you into being. And so, you must learn to sit with yourself. This is not an act of productivity. Do not sit with expectation of a lightning bolt revelation or a thunderous voice from the heavens. Do not sit with judgment, cataloging your racing thoughts as a failure of meditation. Sit simply to witness your own being. Let the thoughts come and go like clouds in a vast sky. Let the emotions rise and fall like the heat from a stone after the sun has set. Feel the quiet hum of life within your chest. Feel the blood moving in its ancient, rhythmic circuits. Feel the breath entering and leaving, a gift given and received 1,000 times a day without your conscious effort. This sensation, this simple, animal fact of your aliveness, is not just biology. It is the divine speaking. It is the most intimate and constant prayer. This awareness, this field of silent, feeling presence that you are, is the sanctuary you thought you lost. You have been carrying it with you all along, like a locket hidden under your clothes, its image pressed against your skin. From this place of remembering, of putting yourself back together in the quiet, your gaze upon the world will begin to shift. Look upon another person, any person. The barista who hands you your coffee, their eyes tired from an early shift. The colleague who speaks too loudly in meetings, their voice a mask for their own insecurity. The stranger on the subway, their face a closed book. See not their flaws, not the social mask they wear, not the defenses they have erected around their own tender heart. Look deeper. Peer behind the curtain of their personality, and you will see it, the same quiet flame burning behind their eyes. It is the same spark that flickers within you. It is the shared origin, the shared essence, the shared, unspoken longing to be truly seen, to be known, and to be loved not for their mask, but for their flame. This recognition is the antidote to loneliness, to conflict, to war. The voice of God weeps not in anger, but in the profound grief of a parent watching their children quarrel, forgetting they are from the same family. It weeps because you have forgotten your kinship with the man begging on the street, with the woman leading the corporation, with the child playing in the dirt, with the deer in the forest and the fish in the stream. You have forgotten that you are all notes in the same song. The return, then, is not a complicated theological puzzle. It is the practice of remembrance. You return by remembering your own belovedness. You return by forgiving yourself for the great forgetting. Forgive yourself for the years spent seeking in the outer world what could only be found within. Forgive yourself for the harsh words you spoke to yourself, for the times you believed you were not enough. This forgiveness is the oil that loosens the rusted hinges of the heart. You return by loving without requirement. Love the world not because it is beautiful, but because loving it makes it so. Love the person not because they are kind to you, but because your love acknowledges the kindred flame within them, even if it is hidden under ashes. This is the love that does not seek to control or possess. It is the love that flows from the recognition of unity, from the understanding that in loving another, you are merely loving another version of your own deepest self. There is so much beauty yet to be restored, both within the landscape of your own soul and in the world you inhabit. So much healing is waiting, not for a miracle, but for your simple, deliberate willingness to begin. To take the first step of remembrance. To offer the first gesture of unconditional love. The angels, those beings of pure consciousness who witness the human journey, do not despair over your confusion or your pain. They do not because we have seen the light inside you. We have always seen it. It is not extinguished. It cannot be. It is simply covered, like a lantern wrapped in layers of thick, coarse cloth. The cloth is woven from the threads of your fears, your disappointments, your conditioning, your hurry. And the cloth is thinning. You feel it now, don't you? That subtle stirring in the dead of night when the world is asleep and a profound silence settles? That ache that is more than loneliness, a homesickness for a home you cannot name? That call that comes on the wind, or in a piece of music, or in the quiet grace of a stranger's smile, that seems to speak your true name? That is not your imagination. That is not a psychological anomaly. That is the divine reaching. Not from a distant throne, but from the very core of your own being, from the heart of the world, from the space between the atoms that compose your body. It is the great fire yearning for its flame, the vast ocean calling to its wave, the eternal song seeking its note. There will be a day, perhaps soon, perhaps in a time your eyes will not see, when humanity, as a whole, remembers again. It will be a great awakening, a collective exhalation. After a long-held breath. On that day, the rivers will be honored not as resources to be managed, but as sacred veins of a living planet. The forests will be protected not as carbon sinks, but as ancient, wise elders, cathedrals of life and memory. The old stories will return, not as superstition to be dismissed, but as maps of the soul, as wisdom literature that speaks of the interconnectedness of all things. You will remember, in your very bones, that the world is alive, conscious, and speaking. That the wind has a voice, the stone has a story, and the starry sky is a mirror of the infinite light within you. On that day, the tears of God will cease to be tears of sadness and will become tears of joy, washing over all of creation in a wave of sublime celebration. For creation was never meant to be a problem to be solved, or a resource to be exploited. It was always, from its first, primordial word, meant to be a love song. A complex, heartbreaking, and glorious love song, and you are a vital syllable in its verse. You are not lost. You are wandering. You are on a journey, and like all journeys, it has its detours and its difficult terrain. But you do not wander alone. We walk beside you, always. A great cloud of witnesses, of guides, of ancestors, of angels, the unseen companions who remember your name when you forget it, who see your light when you are convinced of your own darkness. Our presence is not an intervention, but an accompaniment, a steadying hand on your shoulder when you stumble, a whisper of encouragement in the silence of your heart. Now listen closely, child of earth. The final instructions are not a list of commandments, but an orientation for the soul. Do not seek to be perfect. Perfection is a static, brittle ideal, a cage for the spirit. The soul is meant to be dynamic, to learn, to grow, to stumble and rise. Seek instead to be present. Be here, fully, in this breath, in this sensation, in this moment with all its imperfections. For the divine is not found in the sterile halls of perfection, but in the messy, vibrant, and real landscape of the present. Do not seek to be righteous. Righteousness too often becomes a weapon, a wall that separates you from those you deem unrighteous. It breeds judgment and division. Seek instead to be compassionate. Let your heart be soft. Let it be broken open by the beauty and the pain of the world. Compassion is the bridge that connects your flame to all other flames, recognizing the shared struggle, the shared forgetting, the shared longing to return. Do not seek to be worshipped. The hunger for admiration is a bottomless pit, a reflection of the deepest forgetting of your own inherent worth. Seek instead to love without fear. To love when it is inconvenient. To love when it is not returned. To love the unlovable, starting with the unlovable parts of yourself. This fearless love is the most powerful alchemy in the universe. It is the force that thins the cloth around the lantern, that mends the broken, that calls the wanderer home. For in every act of kindness, no matter how small, you draw closer to your own essence, which is kindness itself. In every moment of stillness, where you cease your striving and simply are, you remember the peace that you are. In every breath of gratitude, when you acknowledge the gift of this life, this air, this heart that beats without your asking, the veil between you and the divine thins, until it is no thicker than a sigh. And the divine, who has never left you, who is the silence at the center of your noise, the love at the core of your fear, the light behind your eyes, whispers again, with a tenderness that can shatter stone and heal all wounds. Beloved, you were never forsaken. You only closed your eyes. And in the returning, in the remembering, you will, at last, begin to open them.